Lyra moved slowly through the dark forest, her heart racing with each step. Every sound made her jump, and her mind replayed her people's warnings about the dangerous creatures on this planet. And even worse, the bloodthirsty humans she might encounter. She was alone, injured, and completely lost. Lyra's journey had started as a simple exploration mission, one meant to map out this strange world. But things had gone horribly wrong. A sudden attack by wild creatures had scattered her team. In the chaos, she'd been left behind. Her leg throbbed with pain from a cut, and she was exhausted. Her people had never been to a place like this, filled with tall, twisted trees and an air that felt thick and hard to breathe. She shivered, remembering the stories she had been told about humans, creatures with a thirst for battle and a love for conquering. Her people believed humans were monsters. They called them bloodthirsty, creatures who enjoyed causing pain. She hoped with all her heart she would never meet one. As she took another shaky step, a loud crash made her stop. She froze, heart pounding, eyes wide with fear. The noise came from somewhere close, too close. Hiding behind a tree, she tried to make herself as small as possible. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she listened. The noise grew louder. Heavy footsteps crunched on the ground, getting closer with each second. Lyra risked a glance from behind the tree. What she saw shocked her. A human was battling one of the wild creatures, a giant beast with sharp teeth and claws. The human, dressed in strange armor, fought with a strength and speed that left her stunned. He moved with ease, dodging the creature's attacks and striking back with a metal weapon that seemed to glow. She watched in terror and amazement as the human finally defeated the beast, landing a final blow that sent it collapsing to the ground. Silence filled the air. Lyra couldn't believe her eyes. She had just witnessed a human in action, and it was both terrifying and impressive. But now, a new fear gripped her. What if he found her next? Her heart hammered as the human looked around, scanning the area. She pressed herself closer to the tree, praying he wouldn't see her. But fate was not on her side. His eyes landed on her hiding spot. He tilted his head, clearly noticing her presence. Lyra's breath caught as he started walking toward her, his steps slow and steady. "Are you all right?" he called out. His voice was deep yet calm. She didn't know how to respond. Fear kept her frozen in place. The human came closer, his face visible now. He didn't look like the monster she had imagined. His eyes were bright, filled with a look of concern rather than cruelty. His skin was rough, showing signs of battle, and his expression softened as he noticed her injuries. "Don't be scared," he said gently, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. "I saw you were hurt. Let me help." Lyra was taken aback. Why was he acting like this? She had been told that humans were selfish and cruel, yet here he was, offering to help her. Confusion and fear fought inside her, but she couldn't deny that her leg hurt too much to keep running. She took a shaky breath and spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Why would you help me? Aren't you dangerous?" The human gave a small smile, as if he understood her fear. "I'm Jack," he said. "And no, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a soldier, but my job is to protect others, not harm them. You don't need to be afraid." Lyra's mind swirled with questions. Was he lying? Was this some kind of trap? But as she looked into his eyes, she saw only kindness there. He knelt down and offered her his hand. "Trust me," he said. "Let me help you get out of here. This planet isn't safe, and you're hurt. You don't want to be out here alone." For a long moment, Lyra stared at his hand. Every instinct told her to run, to hide from this so-called bloodthirsty human. But the pain in her leg was too much, and something in Jack's voice felt sincere. She took a deep breath and, with a trembling hand, reached out and took his. As soon as their hands touched, a strange sense of calm washed over her. Jack gently helped her to her feet, supporting her weight so she didn't have to put pressure on her injured leg. Despite her lingering fear, she felt a spark of hope for the first time since she'd been stranded. Maybe, just maybe, this human was different from the stories. With his arm around her for support, Jack guided her carefully through the forest. Lyra still didn't fully trust him, but each step with him seemed to ease her fear a little. Her mind was filled with questions, but for now, she held them back. Right now, survival was all that mattered. As they moved together through the shadows of the strange forest, Lyra felt something she hadn't expected: gratitude toward a human. She couldn't deny that he had saved her from a dangerous situation. Still, as they walked, she couldn't help but wonder, why would a human care enough to save her life? A strange helper. Jack walked carefully, helping Lyra move through the thick forest. His arms supported her weight, his steps slow and steady so she wouldn't feel rushed. Every few steps, he'd glance down to check on her, making sure she wasn't in too much pain. Lyra tried to stay strong, but her leg hurt badly. She still couldn't understand why this human was helping her. Weren't humans supposed to be dangerous? As they walked, Lyra's mind filled with questions. Her people had told her humans were brutal and selfish, caring only for themselves. But Jack seemed different. His eyes were calm, his touch gentle. She could see kindness in his face, and she didn't know what to make of it. She had expected a monster, not someone who would help her in this way. "Are you in a lot of pain?" Jack asked, breaking the silence. Lyra hesitated, then nodded slightly. "A little. But it's not just my leg." She paused, unsure if she should speak her thoughts. "I don't understand. Why are you helping me?" Jack looked at her, a small smile on his face. "Because you're hurt and alone. I'm a soldier, yes, but I'm trained to protect others, not harm them. Helping people is part of who I am." Lyra frowned, trying to understand. "But humans are supposed to be bloodthirsty. That's what my people say. You fight, you conquer. You don't help." Jack's smile faded a little, and he looked thoughtful. "I know that's what some people believe. Not everyone sees humans in a good light, but we're not all the same. Some of us just want peace. I know it's hard to believe, but not every human wants to fight or hurt others." Lyra felt a flicker of doubt in her mind. Could it be true? Could there really be humans who weren't as ruthless as she'd been taught? She looked down, thinking hard. Jack's actions confused her, but a part of her wanted to believe him. "Do you have family?" Lyra asked softly, wanting to understand more about him. Jack nodded. "Yes, I do. Back on Earth, I have a sister. She's always worried about me, always thinks I'm getting into trouble. And my mother. She's the one who taught me to care for others." He paused, looking distant for a moment. "She'd be disappointed if I left someone behind, especially someone in need." Hearing this made Lyra feel a strange warmth. She had a family too, people who worried about her. She could imagine Jack's sister waiting for him to come back safely, just like her family waited for her. It was a strange thought, to think of a human caring about family in the same way she did. Slowly, her fear of him began to lessen. As they walked, the forest grew darker. Shadows stretched between the trees, and strange sounds echoed in the distance. Jack's grip on her arm tightened a little, and he looked around carefully. "Stay close," he whispered, scanning the surroundings. "This place isn't safe at night." Lyra's heartbeat quickened as she glanced around. She couldn't see anything dangerous, but Jack's serious expression told her to be alert. She nodded and moved closer to him, feeling a mix of fear and trust. Despite her lingering doubts, she felt safer with him by her side. They continued walking until they found a small clearing surrounded by thick bushes. Jack looked around, then nodded in approval. "We'll stop here for a bit. You need to rest that leg." Lyra was hesitant but agreed, carefully lowering herself onto a fallen log. Jack took off his backpack and rummaged through it, pulling out a small wrapped item. He unwrapped it to reveal a strange food item, something Lyra had never seen before. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. It's just a snack, but it'll help keep your strength up. Lyra looked at the food, uncertain. She'd never eaten human food before, and she didn't know if she could trust it. But Jack's expression was calm, and he was eating one himself, showing her it was safe. Slowly, she reached out, taking a small bite. To her surprise, it tasted sweet and comforting, a strange but pleasant flavor. As they ate in silence, Jack watched her with a curious smile. "So, what about you? Do you have family waiting for you back home?" Lyra nodded slowly, her mind drifting to memories of her family. "Yes. I have a mother, a father, and 2 younger siblings. They're probably worried about me right now." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family is important," he said softly. "They give us a reason to keep going, even when things get tough." Lyra felt a pang in her heart. Here she was, sharing her fears with a human, someone she'd once considered an enemy. It felt strange, but right. Somehow, she didn't know what to make of it. As night fell, Jack gathered some sticks and started a small fire to keep them warm. The fire's glow lit up his face, and for a moment, Lyra felt completely safe, as if he was a friend she'd known for a long time. They sat quietly by the fire, both lost in their own thoughts. Lyra glanced at Jack, wondering about the human who had chosen to help her despite the dangers. She still didn't fully understand him, but her fear of him had faded. Maybe, just maybe, he was someone she could trust. As the fire crackled, she felt a strange sense of hope growing inside her. Learning to trust. Lyra sat quietly by the fire, watching the flames dance. The warmth felt comforting after the cold forest air. Across the fire, Jack sat cleaning his weapon, his focus sharp yet relaxed. She couldn't stop staring at him, wondering how someone she'd been taught to fear could seem so calm and kind. He hadn't done anything to harm her, and a strange feeling began to grow within her, a feeling she'd never expected to feel for a human. Jack looked up, noticing her gaze. He gave her a small smile. "You doing okay?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. Thank you." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Jack, I still don't understand why you're helping me. You don't know me, and I'm not one of your kind." Jack's smile faded, and he looked thoughtful for a moment. "I know it might be hard for you to trust me. We come from different worlds, different beliefs. But I don't think kindness should depend on what species someone is. It's just the right thing to do." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She'd never thought of kindness in that way before. On her planet, survival was key, and helping outsiders was seen as weakness. Yet here was Jack, risking his own safety to help her, even though they were strangers. "Back on my planet," Lyra began, "we're taught to survive alone. Relying on others is seen as weakness. It's hard for me to trust, especially when I don't understand your motives." Jack nodded, listening patiently. "I get that. Where I come from, people are different too. Some are selfish, some are kind. But I was taught to help others, especially those in need. My mother used to say that a strong person isn't afraid to lend a hand. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave." Lyra looked down, his words echoing in her mind. Could kindness really be a sign of strength? It was a strange idea, but it stirred something deep within her. As they sat in silence, Jack began to tell her stories about his home, Earth. He spoke of green fields, tall mountains, and vast oceans filled with life. Lyra listened closely, fascinated. Her own planet was dry and rocky, with little vegetation and few bodies of water. Earth sounded like a paradise, a place of peace and beauty. Jack's eyes lit up as he described the different seasons and how each one changed the landscape. Lyra found herself smiling, captivated by his words. She imagined herself standing in one of those green fields, feeling the cool wind and soft grass under her feet. It was hard to believe such a place existed. "And what about your planet?" Jack asked, bringing her back to reality. "What's it like?" Lyra hesitated. Her home was nothing like Earth, but it was all she knew. "It's Barren. There isn't much water, and most of the land is rocky. We have large underground cities to protect us from the heat during the day. Life is difficult, but it's home. Jack nodded, listening carefully. It sounds challenging, but I can tell you're proud of it. Home isn't always perfect, but it's where we find comfort, right? Lyra nodded, surprised at how easily he understood. She had never shared these thoughts with anyone outside her people, yet talking to Jack felt natural, even comforting. She was beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, there was more to humans than she'd been told. As the fire crackled between them, Jack suddenly reached into his bag and pulled out a small medical kit. "We should check that injury," he said gently, motioning to her leg. "We don't want it getting infected." Lyra felt a flicker of nervousness, but nodded, deciding to trust him. She stretched out her leg, allowing him to inspect the wound. His touch was careful, his hand steady as he cleaned the cut and wrapped it in a soft bandage. She winced slightly at the sting, but Jack's calm presence kept her relaxed. "There," he said, securing the bandage. "That should help. Just try not to move too much, okay?" Lyra nodded, surprised by the gentleness of his actions. Her heart raced, and for the first time, she felt a sense of gratitude toward a human. He was treating her with care, something she hadn't expected. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, looking into his eyes. "I don't know why you're so kind, but it means a lot." Jack gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to thank me. Just get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out how to get you back home." As she settled back, leaning against a tree, Lyra felt her guard lowering. Jack had shown her nothing but kindness, and she was starting to believe that he truly wanted to help her. The fear that had gripped her heart was slowly fading, replaced by a cautious trust. As the night grew deeper, Lyra found herself drifting into sleep. For the first time since landing on this strange planet, she felt safe. Her last thought before sleep took over was of Jack's words about kindness and strength. Perhaps, she thought, trust wasn't a weakness after all. Perhaps in trusting this strange human, she was finding a new kind of strength. Danger strikes again. The early morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Lyra slowly opened her eyes, the warmth of the fire now just a faint memory, as she stretched and adjusted her leg. The bandage Jack had wrapped around her wound was still in place, and the pain was bearable. She looked over to see Jack, already awake, sharpening his blade and keeping a close watch on their surroundings. "Good morning," he said with a small smile when he noticed her stirring. "Did you sleep well?" Lyra nodded, feeling a rare sense of peace. "Yes, better than I have in a long time. Thank you for everything, Jack." She hesitated, then added, "I didn't expect a human to care this much." Jack chuckled softly. "Like I said, not all humans are bad. I'm glad I could help." He glanced around, his smile fading as he scanned the forest with a wary look. "We should keep moving, though. This place isn't as safe as it seems." Lyra nodded, her sense of calm beginning to slip away. She didn't know much about this planet, but she trusted Jack's instincts. He seemed alert, and that was enough to make her feel uneasy. They packed up quickly, and Jack helped Lyra to her feet. She limped slightly, but her leg felt stronger than before. As they started walking, Jack kept her close, his gaze constantly shifting, listening to every sound around them. But the peaceful morning didn't last long. A sudden rustling in the bushes made both of them freeze. Jack held out his arm protectively in front of Lyra, his expression turning serious. They both stood perfectly still, listening closely as the rustling grew louder. Whatever was moving through the bushes was coming closer, and fast. "Stay behind me," Jack whispered, gripping his weapon tightly. Lyra's heart began to race, fear creeping up her spine. She knew that something dangerous was nearby, something she wasn't prepared to face alone. Out of the bushes sprang a large wild creature, with sharp fangs and glowing eyes that stared at them hungrily. The beast was covered in thick, bristly fur, its claws digging into the ground as it snarled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Lyra had never seen such a creature before, and fear gripped her heart. Jack positioned himself between her and the beast, his stance strong and focused. "Stay back," he shouted to Lyra. "I'll handle this." Before she could protest, Jack moved forward, circling the beast and studying its movements. The creature growled, lunging at him with a vicious snarl. Jack dodged quickly, his reflexes sharp as he avoided its attack. Lyra watched in awe and terror, barely able to breathe as Jack fought to protect her. The beast lunged again, its claws swiping dangerously close to Jack's chest. He jumped back, then struck with his weapon, landing a blow to the creature's side. The beast let out a pained roar, momentarily stunned but not defeated. It circled Jack, eyes fixed on him, ready to attack again. Lyra's heart pounded as she watched. She wanted to help but knew she was too weak to face such a dangerous creature. She could only watch as Jack fought with everything he had, defending both of their lives with a courage she'd never seen before. Finally, with a quick, decisive move, Jack managed to land a powerful strike to the creature's neck. The beast let out a final growl before collapsing to the ground, its body falling limp. Jack breathed heavily, lowering his weapon as he looked down at the defeated creature. "It's over," he said, his voice steady but tired. He turned to Lyra, concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" Lyra nodded, still in shock. You saved me again," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I didn't think anyone could fight like that." Jack shrugged, giving her a small smile. "I told you, I've had a lot of training. Besides, I wasn't about to let that thing hurt you." As they continued walking, Lyra couldn't shake the image of Jack bravely standing up to the creature. Her people had told her that humans were ruthless and bloodthirsty, but Jack's bravery was different. He fought not for himself but for her, risking his life to protect someone he barely knew. After a while, Jack noticed her quietness and spoke up. "You're awfully quiet. Is everything okay?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with newfound admiration. "Jack, my people were wrong about humans. I see that now. I don't know why you're so kind, but I trust you completely. Thank you for saving me." Jack looked at her warmly, and for a moment, he was lost for words. "You're welcome, Lyra. I know it's not easy to trust, especially when you've been taught otherwise. But you don't have to thank me. I'm just glad you're safe." They continued walking, side by side, through the forest. The encounter with the beast had shaken them both, but something had changed between them. A bond was forming, one built on trust and respect. Lyra no longer saw Jack as a threat, but as a friend, someone she could rely on, even in the most dangerous situations. As they walked, Jack gently placed his hand on her shoulder, a silent promise that he would protect her no matter what. Lyra looked up at him, her fear slowly replaced by a sense of security she'd never known. And as they moved forward, deeper into the unknown, Lyra knew that no matter what dangers lay ahead, she wasn't alone anymore. Jack had become her protector, her friend, and someone she could finally trust. A growing friendship. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Jack and Lyra continued their journey through the dense forest. The shadows of the night had faded, and the sunlight filtering through the trees created a warm, peaceful atmosphere. Lyra felt a sense of relief with each step, her fear slowly melting away. Jack walked beside her, occasionally glancing over to make sure she was okay. Over time, the silence between them grew comfortable. They didn't need words. Their shared experiences had started to build something stronger than just survival. They had faced danger together, and Lyra could feel herself starting to trust Jack fully. She even felt a small spark of joy, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. After a while, Jack spoke up, breaking the silence. "You know, Lyra, I never thought I'd be traveling with someone from another world. It's strange, but in a good way." Lyra chuckled softly, feeling more relaxed than she had since landing on this planet. I feel the same. Where I come from, we're told humans are dangerous. But now, I don't believe that. You're different. Much kinder than I expected. Jack smiled. Well, I can't speak for all humans, but I've always believed in treating others with respect, no matter where they're from. And honestly, Lyra, you've proven to be pretty brave yourself. Not everyone could keep going with an injury like that. Lyra looked down at her leg, noticing how much it had healed since Jack helped her. She knew that without him, she might not have survived at all. Gratitude filled her heart, and she felt compelled to thank him again. Jack, I owe you my life. I can't even imagine how I would have survived without you. Jack waved her gratitude away with a laugh. It's nothing, really. I'm just glad I was there when you needed help. They kept walking, and as they did, Jack began to share more about his life on Earth. He talked about his family, his childhood adventures, and the time he spent training to survive in different environments. Lyra listened closely, fascinated by his stories. She had never heard of places like oceans, forests, or even simple things like rain. Her planet was harsh and dry, with little variation. The wonders of Earth sounded like a dream to her. Jack, noticing her interest, tried to describe Earth's beauty in more detail. The forests back home are different from here. They're greener, with all kinds of animals living in them. And the rain, well, it's amazing. Water falls from the sky and refreshes everything. You'd probably love it. Lyra's eyes sparkled with curiosity. It sounds wonderful, Jack. Maybe one day I could see it for myself. Jack looked at her thoughtfully. I'd like that. I think Earth could use someone as strong as you, Lyra. For the first time, Lyra felt the stirrings of something she hadn't dared feel in a long time. Hope. She had never imagined traveling to another world, but now the thought seemed less impossible. Jack's kindness and encouragement made her believe that anything was possible. They continued their journey, occasionally stopping to rest. As they shared food and stories, their friendship grew stronger. Lyra found herself laughing at Jack's jokes, something she hadn't done in ages. His sense of humor and his calm nature made her feel safe, even in this unfamiliar place. At one point, they came across a small river. The clear, cool water sparkled under the sun, and Jack knelt down, taking a drink. Lyra hesitated, but Jack motioned for her to join him. She cautiously leaned down and took a sip, surprised by how refreshing it felt. Jack grinned. See, not so bad, right? Lyra smiled back, wiping her mouth. It's actually very nice. We don't have rivers like this on my planet. Jack looked thoughtful, as if trying to imagine her home. Sounds tough. I don't know if I could survive in a place like that. You must be pretty strong to have made it this far. Lyra looked down, feeling both proud and a bit shy. I never thought much about it. But maybe you're right. I had to learn to survive early. But it's different now, with you here. They continued on, and as they walked, Lyra's trust in Jack deepened. They both felt the bond between them growing stronger. They were from different worlds, different lives, but somehow they had found common ground. As they reached a small clearing, they decided to stop and rest. They sat on the grass, looking out at the trees and listening to the sounds of the forest. Lyra felt a sense of peace, something she hadn't known since leaving her home. The fear and suspicion that had once clouded her mind were gone, replaced by friendship and trust. Jack stretched his legs, lying back with his hands behind his head. You know, Lyra, I never expected to find a friend out here in the wild. It's kind of nice. Lyra looked at him, her heart filled with warmth. I feel the same, Jack. I never thought I could trust a human, but you've shown me that not all humans are like the stories I was told. Jack glanced at her, a gentle smile on his face. Well, not all humans are perfect, but we're not all monsters either. I'm just glad we met. Lyra. They sat together in comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. Lyra knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she could face them with Jack by her side. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, Lyra felt like she wasn't alone. She had a friend, someone she could trust, and together they could face whatever dangers the forest held. The ultimate test. As the evening shadows grew longer, Jack and Lyra found themselves nearing the edge of the forest. Jack had explained that just beyond lay the open plains, a dangerous area, but also their quickest path to safety. They paused to rest before moving forward, both feeling the tension of what lay ahead. The forest had been full of its own dangers, but Lyra sensed that this new area would be a true test of their survival. As they sat under a large tree, Jack looked at Lyra with a calm, yet serious expression. "Lyra, from here on, we're more exposed. It's open land, so if any creatures or patrols are looking for us, they'll see us easily." Lyra nodded, her eyes narrowing with determination. "I understand, Jack. We'll be careful, but we can't stop now." He agreed. The bond they had built gave them both confidence, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. They stood up, checked their supplies, and moved out of the forest's safety. The open plains stretched out before them, vast, silent, and somewhat eerie. The sky was a mix of dark blue and pink as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ground. Jack could feel the weight of every step, his senses heightened as he scanned the area for any signs of danger. As they walked, they heard a distant rumbling sound. Jack stopped, his eyes narrowing as he looked around. "Did you hear that?" Lyra nodded, her ears perking up. "Yes, it sounds like something large is moving. It could be one of the creatures that roam this planet." Jack felt his heart beat faster. He knew they had to stay calm, but the danger was real. He and Lyra moved quietly, hoping to avoid drawing any attention. However, the rumbling grew louder, and soon they could see a large shadow moving toward them. The creature was massive, with sharp claws and a head that looked like a mix between a bear and a lizard. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it sniffed the air, searching for prey. Jack and Lyra crouched behind a large rock, trying to remain as still as possible. Jack looked over at Lyra, whispering, "If it spots us, we'll have to fight. But we can't let it get close." Lyra nodded, her breathing shallow. She was afraid, but her trust in Jack gave her strength. "I'll follow your lead, Jack." The creature continued to sniff the air, its gaze turning in their direction. Suddenly, it let out a loud roar, having caught their scent. Jack knew they were out of options. He stood up, gripping a long stick he had sharpened earlier as a makeshift weapon. "Lyra, get ready." The creature charged, its heavy steps shaking the ground. Jack held his ground, waiting for the right moment. As the creature lunged, he thrust the stick forward with all his strength, aiming for its eye. The sharp end hit its mark, and the creature roared in pain, pulling back as it swiped blindly at the air. Lyra, seeing her chance, grabbed a large rock and hurled it at the creature's head. Her throw was powerful, and the rock struck the creature's other eye, blinding it completely. The creature stumbled, disoriented and roaring in agony. Jack quickly motioned to Lyra. "Let's go. We need to get out of here before it recovers." They ran as fast as they could across the plains, the creature's cries echoing behind them. It clawed at the ground, thrashing in pain, but they didn't look back. Adrenaline pumped through their veins, pushing them forward until the creature's roars grew faint in the distance. After several minutes of running, they finally slowed down, catching their breath. Jack glanced at Lyra, giving her a proud smile. "You were amazing back there, Lyra. You acted quickly and saved us both." Lyra looked at him, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. "It was because of you, Jack. You showed me how to be brave. I never thought I could face something like that. But with you, I felt strong." Jack nodded, feeling the deep sense of respect for his alien friend. They had faced a life-or-death situation together, and neither had backed down. Their bond had been tested, and they had proven that together, They could overcome even the greatest challenges. They continued walking, though both of them remained alert, knowing the plains held other dangers. But this time, their steps were lighter, their spirits higher. They had faced their fears and survived. They were more than just allies now. They were true friends, bound by the trust they had in each other. As they walked under the darkening sky, Jack glanced at Lyra and spoke softly. "I think we're close. Soon, we'll find a safe place, and then, who knows?" Lyra smiled, her heart filled with hope. "Whatever comes, Jack, I know we can face it together." With that, they walked on, their friendship stronger than ever, ready to face whatever new challenges awaited them. A new beginning. The night had fully settled over the plains, and Jack and Lyra finally arrived at the edge of a small, peaceful village. It wasn't much, but it was a safe place for now. The lights from small houses flickered in the distance, a welcoming sight after days of walking through dangerous territory. The stress and fear of their journey started to ease as they approached the village gate. Jack looked at Lyra, his expression serious. "We made it. This place should be safe for now. Let's get some rest, and we'll figure out our next move tomorrow." Lyra nodded, feeling exhausted but grateful. She had come so far, from a scared, alone alien girl to someone who had survived countless dangers with the help of Jack. She never thought she'd find peace, but now it felt within reach. They walked through the village, their steps slow and deliberate. The people there seemed peaceful, unaware of the dangers the two had faced. Lyra noticed the curious glances from some of the villagers as they passed, but no one spoke to them. She couldn't help but feel a little out of place, her alien features still a stark contrast to the humans around her. Jack sensed her discomfort and gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry. We'll be fine here. You're not alone anymore." His words were a comfort, and Lyra felt her heart lighten. She realized how true they were. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Jack. They found an empty house on the outskirts of the village. The door creaked as Jack pushed it open, revealing a small room with a few simple pieces of furniture. A bed in the corner, a small table, and a fireplace that looked unused. It wasn't much, but it would do for the night. Jack went over to the fireplace, starting a small fire with some dried wood he found nearby. The warmth from the fire filled the room, creating a cozy atmosphere. Lyra sat on the bed, watching him work. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since her homeworld was destroyed. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to relax. After a few moments, Jack sat down beside her. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out what to do. But tonight we rest. You've earned it." Lyra smiled at him, grateful beyond words. "Thank you, Jack. I don't know what I would have done without you." Jack chuckled softly. "I'm glad we found each other. You're strong, Lyra. Stronger than I ever imagined." They both sat in silence, the crackling fire the only sound in the room. Lyra let the quietness wash over her. She felt safe for the first time in what felt like forever. With Jack by her side, she didn't have to worry about the dangers lurking in the shadows. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future. The next morning, the village was alive with activity. People went about their daily routines, unaware of the strange pair that had arrived the night before. Jack and Lyra went to the village square to find food and gather information. They had to decide what their next step would be. Jack didn't want to stay too long in one place, but they needed to be sure it was safe before they moved on. As they walked through the village, they found an old woman selling fruit at a market stall. Jack approached her, asking if she had any information about what was beyond the village. The woman smiled warmly, recognizing the foreign look in their eyes. "You're new here, aren't you? Well, beyond the village, the land is still wild, but there are towns to the south. You could find shelter there, though it's a long journey." Jack thanked her and turned to Lyra, who had been watching the conversation quietly. "Looks like we got some options. We could head south, or we could stay here for a while and get some rest. What do you think?" Lyra hesitated for a moment. She thought about the long road ahead, the dangers they might face, and the people they had met. "I think we should stay here for a little longer. I'm not ready to leave just yet. I want to learn more about this place, and maybe I could find a way to help." Jack looked at her, his eyes soft with understanding. "I think that's a great idea. We'll take it one day at a time. We've made it this far, and we'll keep going, no matter what." They decided to stay in the village for now. Each day, they worked together, learning about the people and the land. Jack helped the villagers with odd jobs, while Lyra spent time getting to know the children and the elderly. She shared stories of her world, and they taught her about theirs. Slowly but surely, she began to feel at home, surrounded by people who were kind and welcoming. One evening, as Jack and Lyra sat together by the fire in their small house, Lyra spoke up. "Jack, I never thought I'd feel like this. When I first arrived here, I thought I was alone, but now I know I'm not. You've become my family." Jack smiled warmly, his heart swelling with pride. "And you're my family too, Lyra. We'll stick together, no matter what. This is just the beginning for us." Lyra looked at the sky through the small window, the stars shining brightly overhead. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt hope. The future wasn't certain, but she knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. They both stood up, looking out at the peaceful village before them. Together, they had come so far, and this was just the start of a new chapter in their lives. The road ahead might be uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it together. This was the beginning of a new life, a new world, and a new beginning for both of them.